Greetings from Kodesh Yerushalayim. I'd like to thank Rabbi Yaakov Berachos for inviting me to participate in what appears to be a wonderful program to involve people in a kaviyus in Talmud Torah. It's hard to think of a more noble obligation and an endeavor, an initiative, and I certainly wish him well and the Kolel well and the big Yashikayach to everyone who has chosen to participate. When Rabbi Yaakov called me and suggested some possibilities, he mentioned a number of dapim at the end of the fifth parak in Berachos, and his suggestion was to maybe pick on one or two themes and to discuss it for a bit. And so after looking at the last Omud in Berachos, in Perek Hamishi, Ein Omdim, I thought I would discuss a Maimer Chazal found on Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, and to try to expand this using the Torah and the insights of my Rebbe, Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal. The Gemara there, in discussing the various brachos of the Shemona Esrei and the structure of the Shemona Esrei, so the Gemara comments, Omar Rav Yehuda, Liolam al Yishal Odom Tzurachav lo b'shalosh rishonos v'lo b'shalosh achronos, ela be'emtzios. Rav Yehuda is commenting and saying that, as we all know, the Shemona Esrei is composed of 19 brachos, and the first three are brachos of praise, and the last are brachos of thanksgiving. And in between the 13 middle brachos are ones in which we are to ask Hashem and to request Hashem to satisfy a variety of needs. And so what Rav Yehuda is telling us is that it is not permissible to make these requests, to be mish'alel odom al tzurachav at the beginning of the Shemona Esrei or at the end, but rather it should be included within the middle brachos of the Shemona Esrei. And the Gemara continues, Dama Rav Chanina, Rishonos Dama le'eved shemisader shevach lifnei rabo. So the structure of the Shemona Esrei can be compared to a servant who is approaching his master. In the beginning, it's like a servant beseeching his master, praising him first. Emtzios Dama le'eved shemivakesh pras merabo. And the middle petitionary brachos are the servant coming before his master and asking for some favor. And the last three brachos are comparable to a servant who comes before his master and has received whatever he has been granted, and he leaves. The question that, and of course as we know, one is permitted to expand on any of the middle brachos of the Shemona Esrei. For example, if someone is sick and we want to mention a specific refuah shleima for a given individual, we can include their name in the refuahenu. And likewise, in Parnosa, we're permitted to add our own personal prayer in Borech Aleinu. And of course, the Shema Kolenu, the last of the 13 petitionary brachos, is an opportunity to include any type of request, any type of bakosha that we have of Hashem. We can include it there, and it's certainly permissible. The immediate question that arises is the Gemara, which follows. The Gemara then goes on to say, it mentions a number of stories about a certain Talmud who went before the Omud to daven, and he was Ma'arich Yoser. And he decided to expand on the Shemona Esrei. And of course, Chazal weren't too pleased with that. How does this comport with the Gemara in Berachos earlier on Daf Yud Aleph, where the Gemara comments, Amar Rav Yochanan, the Gemara says, Ulavai sheyispalel adam kol hayom kulo. Halavai, that a person should pray all day. And in fact, Rashi and Tosfos, the Ri, right there on Daf Yud Aleph, the Ri comments that halacha is like Rav Yochanan besofik, which means if I don't know whether I daven Shemona Esrei or not, I'm permitted to repeat it. But how does this, it seems to be a bit contradictory with the story that we just read, where someone who expanded on the Shemona Esrei did not find favor in the eyes of Chazal. I'd like to try to, in answering this question, to approach tefillah by sharing with you a fundamental insight of the Rav's, which he received from his grandfather, the famous Reb Chaim Brisker. He begins like this. The Rambam tells us, and I'm reading from the Rambam. The Rambam says, Mitzvah saseh lispalel b'chol yom. The Rambam felt at the very beginning of Hilchos Tefillah in Mishnah Torah that there is a biblical obligation to pray every day. Shene'emar v'yavadetem es Hashem Elokeichem. That a person has to serve Hashem, and of course, mipi hashmu alamdu she'avoda zu hi tefillah. And this avoda, this service, is prayer. Shene'emar uliyavdo b'chol levavchem amru chachamim ezu avoda shebalev zu tefillah. The service of the heart is prayer. So the Rambam is foursquare that there's a biblical obligation, dioraisa, to daven every day. Ramban, in his agos on the Sefer HaMitzvahs, Ramban disagrees with the Rambam, and he says, Vadai kol inyan atfila eino chova klal, aval hu midas chesed habore yizborach, olenu sheshomea v'oneh b'chol koreinu elov. So the Rambam says there is no biblical obligation, but the obligation to pray is midrabanan. It's a very important rabbinic obligation, but it is only a rabbinic obligation. However, Rav Soloveitchik pointed out that there is one situation where even Ramban would agree that there is a biblical obligation. And here, Ramban comments also in his glosses on the Sefer HaMitzvahs, the mitzvah al tzara shetovo al hatzibur litzok lefonov bitfila ubitrua shenemar. And he quotes psukim, that when there is a tzara, when there is a clear and present danger, when the Jewish people are confronted with, God forbid, a famine, or with the possibility of a war, or the like, then there is a biblical obligation to pray. So Rav Soloveitchik wanted to explain that what exactly is this machlokes between the Rambam and Ramban. And he explained it this way as his grandfather explained it. He said, the disagreement, in order to understand the disagreement, he says we have to distinguish between two types of crises. One he calls a surface crisis. A surface crisis is when we're confronted with some external danger. It can be a disease, chas v'shalom. Lo aleinu, it can be some other tzara that comes to us from the outside. God forbid, a war, a famine. Things that, unfortunately, in this day and age, we've become quite familiar with. But it's always been that way. In that type of situation, kulei alma lo plige, everyone agrees that the obligation to pray is min haTorah. It's a biblical obligation to pray. However, the disagreement between the Rambam and Ramban is on another type of crisis, which Rav